I'm sorry, we have already saluted the flag at that time, and we are out to our next item on the agenda, which is our statement of public notice. This is a regular meeting of the Board of Education. The time and the place of this meeting was provided, and copies of that resolution were forwarded to the official newspaper as designated by the Board of Education and to the township clerk. And a copy of the notice was posted on the bulletin board of the Board of Education offices in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act. Due to the public health emergency in the state of New Jersey, as declared in Executive Order 103, the board will be suspending normal meeting procedures this evening and conducting a virtual meeting. Directions for accessing the virtual public meeting were posted on the district website, www.bernardsboe.com. These same directions were posted at our intended but unavailable meeting location. We very much welcome input from the public. Because this is a virtual meeting, public comment will be handled in one of three. The preferred method is a full video via Zoom. When you're ready to make your public comment, join the Board of Education meeting via the Zoom link posted on the district webpage at www.bernardsboe.com. Please plan for your participation by turning on your camera and your microphone, dressing appropriately, maintaining a proper background setting for your camera's view, having a quiet space, and muting the YouTube live stream of the Board of Education meeting when you are speaking so that there is no feedback with your participation in the Zoom meeting. You'll be placed in a queue and admitted to the meeting when it is your turn to make a public comment. Once you see that you are admitted to the Zoom call, it will be your turn to make your public comment. Please begin your comment by stating your full name and your address. This is essential for your participation in the public meeting. After making your public comment, please exit the Zoom meeting so that the next person in the waiting room may make their public comment. Method 2 is the dial-in via Zoom, which is voice only. When you are ready to make your public comment, join the Zoom meeting using the dial-in phone number and meeting ID that is also posted on the district website. Please plan for your participation by having a quiet space and muting the YouTube live stream of the Board of Education meeting so that when you are speaking, there is no feedback with your participation in the Zoom meeting. You will be placed in a queue and admitted to the meeting in the same way that the full Zoom participants will be. Once you see that you're admitted, it is your turn to make your comment. Please begin your comment by stating your full name and address. After making your comment, please exit the Zoom meeting so the next person can be admitted. If the full video method of public comment is not an option for you and the dial-in method fails, please follow the directions to submit your public comment as following. Starting at 7 p.m., email your comment to btconnect@bernardsboe.com or text your comment to 908-292-3047. Use public comment as the email subject or the start of your message. Indicate your first name and last name as well as your address. This is required for your public comment to be read into the record. Regardless of method, please note that public comments are limited to a maximum of 3 minutes if read aloud. Individuals are permitted a maximum of 1 public comment during each of the public comment sections on the agenda. Public comments submitted via method 1 or 2 will be processed first, then comments submitted by method 3. An individual's comments made using method 1 or 2 will not also be read in through method 3. The Board of Education reserves the right to limit the length of time allotted for public comment. In the event that the time limitations prohibit the reading of a public comment received pursuant to these instructions, the comment will be published as part of the meeting minutes. No comments will be accepted before 7 p.m. or after item 19, board forum on the agenda begins. Just as a note, the board is continuing with the format of 45 minutes of public comment during both sections, both the agenda item and non-agenda item sections of the agenda. Thank you. With that, we need to have a roll call. So Mr. McLaughlin, could you please do that for us?
Ms. Beckman?
Here.
Ms. Schaefer?
Here.
Mr. Salmon?
Here.
Mrs. White,
Here.
Mrs. McCune,
Here.
Mrs. Richmond,
Here.
Mrs. Korn,
Here.
Mr. Markarian,
Here.
Mr. Syatt,
Here.
Ms. Fox,
Here.
Mrs. Gray,
Here.
Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. With that, we are up to our next item on the agenda, which is, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong section of the agenda. My apologies. The student representative, Juliet.
Hello, thank you again for having me. So first off, the hybrid students have transitioned back into being part-time at school following the break and the all-virtual period. However, there has been a lot of curiosity regarding the administration's plans moving forward, so I'm excited to relay tonight's information to the student body. Additionally, I've heard some students question how the transition back to school is weighing the experiences of both hybrid students and those who remain all virtual. People just wanted to make sure the administration was considering how the suggested extended school days will affect those on Zoom by adding extra screen time, in addition to how it could benefit the hybrid students. And despite the many uncertainties, Ridge is starting to prepare various spring traditions like Mr. Ridge, Senior Prom, and the Spring Musical, which this year is Cats. Thank you.
Thanks, Juliet. Do board members have any questions for Juliet? Thanks for being here. We always appreciate that. As you know, you're welcome to stay, but don't feel compelled to. And with that, I think we are up to the board presentation. Mr. Markarian?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so we'll share screen here. Okay, everybody seeing that all right?
Yes.
Thank you. So first, I just wanted to welcome Dr. Matthew Spiesler. The district physician is joining us tonight. He's here to give us some perspective on how he's seeing the situation now relative to some recommendations in the presentation, as well as our nursing coordinator, Ms. Zarabera, was also kind enough to join us this evening. So with that said, we'll get right into this and try to answer Juliet's question, as I'm sure it's on the minds of lots of folks that tuned in tonight. So just to kind of quickly recap where we began in making some of these amendments, we've consistently been speaking about trying to bring back elementary students more regularly on a daily basis, starting with K1 and 2. We've talked about extending the Bell schedule to full days, even with the cohort system as another objective. We'll talk about that in a little bit. We haven't forgotten about before and after care, and we still desire to bring that back at some point this year. And our plan is to continue the 100% virtual program for all grades, barring anything strange that could happen with respect to an executive order or anything like that. Our plan would be to continue it throughout this school year. And then in the long term, we want to talk a little bit about what we're thinking with respect to grades beyond just the K-1-2 students that we are trying to bring in on a daily basis. So kind of picking off each of these items one at a time, where are we with our kindergarten first and second grade project and bringing those students to school on a daily basis? So we did start last week on January 19th, bringing in kindergarten students on a daily basis. That means that the A cohort students and the B cohort students, if they wanted to be in person, were afforded that ability to come to school each day. We are still operating on the abbreviated day schedule. So those students that are coming daily are still being dismissed at 1 o'clock. and they are not having lunch in school, which I think is a theme that kind of rang throughout a lot of the work that we've done in the last couple of weeks. We're going to plan on moving grade 1 rather, forward Monday, February 1, and we're looking at second grade for Wednesday, February 17th. Our target has been, for those parents that were surveyed in K1 and 2, they probably recall that when we put this out there, that we wanted to maintain class size at about 15 students per class and or use larger spaces. We know that if we have more than 15 students and we're trying to maintain social distancing, we may look to move a group of students to a different space in the building to give them more room. And of course, a common theme throughout many of our discussions that you'll hear tonight is that as we make efforts to bring students in daily and add staff and manage class size, that does have the impact of some students being shifted in their assignments to teachers. So they may move to a teacher that is brand new to the district, or possibly be shifted to a teacher that has already been working in the district. Certainly we have some agenda items on the personnel section of the Board of Ed agenda tonight to add some elementary school teachers, and we'll review that going forward as well. So we feel like we're making progress, especially in the K1-2 area, and we'll talk about some of the other grades going forward. So with respect to changing the bell schedule to a full school day using the cohort system, we've been talking about that. And so we put out a selection form that offered that option to parents, that or virtual. And in the same selection form, we proffered scenario 2, which was in-person abbreviated days without the cohort system, or obviously continuing the virtual option. And the reason that we did that was because there were certainly some downsides to scenario 1 that were not great, but also because we started to see a ratio of students across the district where many of them were shifting to or participating in the virtual program. And that 100% virtual program has shifted significantly in terms of the makeup of students since we began the school year in October. As I mentioned, at January 11th, the ratio is about 55% in person to 45% virtual. And therefore, since that has some upsides in our minds, we decided to include that in the selection form because of how that ratio has been shifting over the past several weeks. Some basic differences between these two, as described actually in the selection form that parents completed, was that in the first scenario, we do have the cohort system, which is beneficial in the sense that we know that we can manage class size. That was the initial design of that system. Although there is a real concern about having more time in school with respect to taking masks off to eat, managing the eating environment, cleaning the eating environment. So, you know, the numbers that we took a look at there were relevant in terms of lunches, but also we recognize what Juliet raised and many folks have raised, of course, is also that, you know, when you take a look at going to school all day, there are some other factors that are really cons in the situation. And that is, of course, that you're going to be seeing all of your cohort classmates on a daily basis, 612, going through all 9 periods. And also that's going to mean that the students that are virtual, that are not in the school building, are going to be following along for the full school day, depending on which periods, of course, they would have classes that require them to log on to Zoom, which for some students are going to obligate them, obviously, from 7:30 to 2:30. And that is certainly something that we recognize as a challenge for students, not to mention the fact that it makes the teachers unavailable for the support activities that they've been doing in the afternoons, because they would be obligated to the students in front of them until the end of our school day. The second scenario, therefore, has gained some more traction in our minds, and one that we're really focused on going forward. And the fact that we have, as I mentioned earlier, this kind of shift in the number of students virtual versus the number of students interested in person really has us focusing on this. But the challenge here, of course, is that when you bring the cohorts together, you do lose that cohorting system because you're bringing the A and the B students together into the building at the same time. And therefore, your class size and your social distance become a little bit more of a challenge, because obviously you're going to have more students in the classroom based on the selection form. So our big effort in the past week was to kind of look at the selection form relative to what people indicated they would be willing to do in that second scenario, and how many students would that put into our different sections as we evaluated the schedule. Again, in scenario 2, we would still be following the same daytime schedules in terms of the start of the school day and the end of the school day that we're currently doing, so that we would not be serving lunch in school and students would still be dismissed on an abbreviated day schedule. So with that, I have to thank Ms. Fox. I know she's here tonight. She did a lot of work with the principals and others trying to scrub through the selection form responses. We anticipated getting responses from about 3,834 students. These are the students that were in the blended A program, the blended B program, or the 100% virtual. We were looking for commitments from all of the parents for each of the students in these scenarios that were in grades 3 to 12. As we spoke about earlier, the grade K1-2 students and their parents had done a separate selection form going back prior to this one because we were looking to move forward with those 3 grade levels. So this was only grades 3 to 12. We had an actual response rate of 3,340. And then after kind of going through and cleaning up some things that might have been perhaps double submissions, duplicate submissions for the same student, or submissions that were inaccurate in some way, we came down to about 2,933 usable submissions, which was about a 76% response rate. And you can see that of that, 780 were K5 students, really 3-5 probably, and the 2,153 were 612. So sorry about that, K, it should be a 3. And that's just the basic response rate. So we talked about this a little bit more, a little bit earlier in terms of the implications of scenario 1. And these are a little bit redundant to what I just described a little bit earlier in the presentation. But one of the things that I think is relevant also is that if we have the students in school for a whole day, they also have to endure wearing a mask for the entire day of school. In scenario 2, we focused really on the numbers, right? We wanted to try to get a sense of what would happen across our schools if we allowed the students to come to school on a daily basis and combine the cohorts with the A and B students both coming in every day. At the elementary level, that would be Monday through Friday. And you can get a sense here of what the mix looked like based on the responses that folks submitted. Now, you may ask, well, what did we do with respect to the folks that did not submit a response? And in that case, we kind of took them for where they are currently. So having no response, we accepted that that meant that someone that was currently virtual would want to stay virtual, and somebody that was currently in the blended program would want to come to school in person. And so that's how we counted those folks. So, clearly missing about a quarter of the responses, we had to do something. We couldn't let 25% of the population be in limbo, and we had to count them somewhere. So that's the approach that we used. And taking that approach, we get these class size ranges between the in-person, which is the blended, right? That's the green. And the virtual sections are shown in the pink salmon color there for each of the 4 elementary schools in grades 3, 4, and 5. As I said, we already had started a project for K1 and 2 that's well underway. So we began this effort strictly for grades 3 to 12. So this gives you a sense of the outcome in the selection form and what types of numbers we would be dealing with in our elementary school classrooms. So in taking this approach, you know, we think that this is something that we can do, but obviously it involves rebalancing some of our sections, especially, as I mentioned, where we have hired staff at the K-1-2 level. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be talking more about the personnel when we get to the end of the presentation, but we have some staff also for grades 3 and 5 that have an impact on this picture as well. Where we have classes where we're not able to add staff, because there is a limitation to what we can do by adding staff, largely because of what is available in terms of the current labor force among elementary teachers available to come in mid-year. We could certainly attempt to mitigate by finding more staff, but we feel like we're just about run dry in that effort. It's been pretty exhaustive in the last few weeks, and we don't think that that's going to be particularly productive. So we want to take advantage of some other strategies for the larger elementary sections. You know, in terms of desk barriers, we already have received desk barriers for the K-1-2 students. And based on the section sizes, we can order more desk barriers that can be used in the classrooms for beyond second grade. And we've also talked about an idea where we may need to rotate some students out of the regular classroom to a learning lab, if you will, or a setting where the students can participate remotely, still coming to school every day, but if class size is really overcrowded for the space that we have available, perhaps having a few students rotating out on a daily basis to a supervised space where they can participate remotely, similar to the way they do when they're participating at home right now. Social distance in the classroom, I'm sure this comes as no surprise to anyone here, but it's just a reminder to keep people advised of the fact that we are still striving to create that social distance. It's been a priority for us from the get-go. Our original design was striving for that 6 feet of social distancing, and that was predicated on roughly 12 students in the classroom. Of course, keeping in mind there's a lot of variables that are noted above, and we're still trying to maintain that distance as much as possible. But any of these scenarios that increase the class size obviously have an impact on the available space between students, where we are certainly going to have situations where it is less than 6 feet. The table below gives you a sense of what's going on from the selection form relative to what would happen at the middle school level. We chose the number 15 students in the classroom as something that we thought might be manageable. As I mentioned, that would certainly be less space than is available now. And we just took a look at what would happen in terms of the number of sections that would have 15 or more, 16 or more students in them at the middle school. And of course, Annan runs with 9 periods of instruction set up, and we have an A day and a B day system. So on any given period, we have a class size for A days and a class size for B days, which is why you're seeing a green color and a pink color for each of the days, A days and B days, and how many sections would exceed 15 or more students. And you can see that kind of on the bottom row there. For example, period 4 is a tough spot at William Annan. You see that on the A day, we'd have 9 sections with 15 or more students, and on the B day, 8 sections with 16 or more students. So it tends to be a little bit challenging in some periods more so than others to try to mitigate larger class sizes. So the implications at the middle school, it's possible that you might do a little bit of jiggling around with student schedules to try to balance some of the larger class sizes if you brought all the students in together on the A day, B day scenario and combine them into the single group. And we talked about the same concept as I mentioned earlier at the elementary school in shifting some students out on a rotating basis to a learning lab setting. And of course, the use of desk barriers has been standard practice when we've had more students in a space than is ideal. At the high school, again, thanks to Ms. Fox, we have additional information of the same nature with respect to the number of sections that would exceed this sort of target number of 15 students. And this is presented in the same way in terms of the number of periods in the day and the A days and the B days. Similar implications exist, obviously, for the high school, as they have a very similar schedule structure to the middle school. However, it's much less likely at the high school that there would be any schedule changes that could easily facilitate any types of oversized classes. So at this point, before jumping into any recommendations, I just want to invite Ms. Fox if she wanted to add any color to anything that we just reviewed. But I think she did a great job organizing those tables. So if you don't think I missed anything, Ms. Fox, we'll keep moving.
I think you got it.
Okay, great. So at this stage, where are we in the short term? What we're really focused on, as I mentioned earlier, was the K-1-2 program. We're really excited with the way that that's going. And we're really hopeful that perhaps by the end of February, we'll be able to work with our sectioning to get all of our students, not just K-1 and 2, but also grades 3, 4, and 5 into the school on a daily basis. Now, this is not something that is a small undertaking. If we get into the first week of March, perhaps before this is totally done, I can't say for certain, but I want to put the goalpost somewhere. And so we're looking at trying to get it done in the month of February. Now, obviously, we are in a situation that has been a little bit unsettled, to say the least. And we don't know if it's possible to be derailed along the way. We certainly hope not. We certainly hope to see data improving and health conditions improving. But we want to recognize that health in general and the number of cases in general has been good at the elementary level in particular. We can't say that with as much confidence at the 6-12 level, but at the elementary level, we feel as though we can move forward and we can try to get these students coming to school daily throughout the grade levels by the end of February. And that's on the same schedule that we're currently using, meaning the abbreviated days and not serving lunch in school. Now, the 6-12 situation is clearly different. I think everybody that's kind of been paying attention understands that we've had a lot of challenges at the 6-12 level, just in maintaining the health of the staff and maintaining enough staff in the buildings to keep things operating. We've had a lot of situations of exposures and close contacts and positive cases that have made that a very significant challenge. So really in consultation with our district physician and in talking to the local health department, the immediate is not really the time to loosen our protocols that we are currently using at the 6-12 level. So we're trying to take a look at what kind of metrics, and I know this is something that's been very, very difficult for us to feel comfortable with. We have talked about what has been known as the Cali score around the state of New Jersey. As you know, right now, we basically the entire state is in this orange state of risk. And, the one stage below that is the yellow stage, so that is something that we could take a look at along with talking to our local health department about local conditions within the school or within the town setting. And talking about, when is the safe timing, right? When is the safe timing to start doing a little bit more? And I know that, as I mentioned, that Dr. Spiesler's here tonight, and he and I have talked about this with our return to instruction team. And I certainly wanted to offer him the opportunity to weigh in, and you know, he could answer some board member questions as well on this topic. But we think it's important that for now we kind of hold pat and we watch. You know, we watch how things play out going forward, and reconsider moving toward having the students come in on an abbreviated day in an uncohorted setting in the future. It's difficult to say exactly when that might be, but I think that the Cali score helps us. And, you know, with any kind of luck, maybe we're looking at sometime in February, late February, maybe it's March. You know, I wish I could pinpoint a date and say, you know, on this day, things are going to be looking great. And we can invite all the students that want to come to school, the opportunity to come to school on a daily basis. So with that said, I don't know if Dr. Spiesler, if you want to share any thoughts that you're having about what you're seeing going on, but that's where we are right now in the short term.
Sure. Thanks so much, Nick, for inviting me. I really appreciate the opportunity to being here, and the communication that we have between you, Mr. Syed, and Mrs. Zarabara. It's really great. It shows that the district is really following the science, and we've devised a plan, or the plan that was presented certainly has great merit. It shows that we're trying to bring students back. We know that the best place for students to be is in-person instruction. However, you're very clear in following the guidelines and making sure that everybody is safe when they go back to school. So I applaud you for that. As a school physician for 5 districts, I'm amazed by the open communication that we have between all of us. If something comes up, we discuss and we come up with a plan. I think the plan has a lot of merit. Today, we heard from the governor that this is the first time in many months that the transmission rate dropped below 1, which is certainly a positive sign, showing us that maybe there's some movement here to end this pandemic that we've been plagued with for the past year or so. Unfortunately, with the way the vaccine rollout program has approached us and has come to be, it's not the greatest, and I'm still concerned that we're not going to be able to vaccinate, immunize the number of people that they say they're going to, as is projected. We're hoping that J&J comes out with their vaccine, which may give us some more doses, and that the state has the manpower to be able to immunize more people. Until we get to the 70% immunization rate, which is the rate that we look at herd immunity, the pandemic is going to continue. And I think the only way to combat this thing is, as I mentioned before, the previous meeting, is what former CDC Director Tom Frieden said, the 3 W's: wash your hands, wear a mask, and watch your distance. And I think this plan looks at those 3 things analytically and critically. I applaud the district about the lunches. School lunches are a breeding ground for this thing and a transmission place for it. And the fact that we're not going to be having lunch in school is certainly a plus that'll make this plan and propel it forward. Even in the hospitals, doctors are asked not to be eating in common areas, doctors' lounges, and they're asked to go into separate areas to use their food. So I think the district is right in having an abbreviated day and not providing lunches for students. So I wish you luck with the plan. I'm always available. I'll answer any questions that board members may have regarding the plan, but I think the plan is very thoughtful. I support it 110%. And I'm hopeful that we'll be able to move this thing forward as we get into the upper grades. Certainly the challenge is going to be in the middle school and the high school, where students are a little bit more mobile. They're more social, and that's the problem that we have in terms of transmission. But hopefully, with all factors considered, we'll be able to move the plan through and get everybody back to school. Thank you.
Thanks. We'll take some questions from board members when we wrap things up in a few slides here. But I don't know if Rita, you might want to jump in and share some thoughts that you've been kind of collecting as you've experienced the last month or so.
Sure. So I made some notes, some things that I thought were important for the board members to hear. I think it comes down to kind of a risk versus reward situation, and we need to look at, what kind of education do we want to deliver and what risk are we willing to take to deliver that, right? So it's all about what we're willing to accept and what kind of compromises we can make. I like the plan that's proposed. I remember talking back in August about if we were going to do this and reopen, we should do it in a phased approach. And I think that's what the plan is doing. Our elementary schools have not been overwhelmed with a lot of COVID. If I look at the numbers, Liberty Corner, Mount Prospect, and Oak Street have all had 5 students that have tested positive, and Cedar Hill has 6. They have had staff members in all of those buildings that have had 7 or 8 cases in each building. So that has certainly created challenges. But overall, the elementary school has not been hit hard. Probably the biggest impact is family members that are positive, right? And then having close contacts. And so we've had a significant number of students out or staff members out because they are identified as a close contact or they have a household member that's sick. And that certainly presents a lot of challenge. I think we need to, stick with looking at some of the objective data. We look at the numbers in Bernards Township. I know our health officer sent out a letter last Thursday, I believe, or Friday, saying that the week prior was the highest recorded number of cases that we've had since the pandemic began. So I think it's really important that we continue to look at the numbers locally. And then also with the Cali score that you mentioned, Mr. Markarian, we're in the Central West region. Right now we're still in that orange or high category. And so I think that's important to track that, as well as looking at what's happening in our state and certainly nationally. One of the concerns, obviously, that people are hearing about now is these variants that are coming. And there's the UK variant and the South African variant and Brazilian variant. And we're not really sure what's going to happen, but what we're hearing from the scientists are that the virus may be more transmissible, much more easier to get. And so that's a concern. So I would say that the elementary schools are really the place to start slowly with bringing back a grade at a time, and to hold off on the middle school and the high school until we see what happens. We know that the transmission there has been much higher. The numbers at Ridge, we have 61 students that have tested positive and 9 staff members at the high school. And then the middle school, we've had 25 students that have been positive and 7 staff members. As most people know, from last week, we've had instances where a student is in the building that might have been sick, or we find out someone was there that's positive, and it creates this, a domino effect where it affects so many people, where we've got staff members now that are exposed or other students that are exposed, and they all need to leave. So the close contact number, again, is really such a significant thing. So my concern with any plan is reducing, the cohorting, reducing the social distancing that we're doing. So again, it goes back to what I started with, right? Looking at the educational benefit and the risks though to the virus, and what are we willing to accept. So that would be my comments. I like the plan as you presented it, and I think it's manageable, and we have to see how things go from week to week.
Right. Thanks, Rita. I think too, as we look at, continuing the status quo for the time being at the 612, I think it's also, a consideration to take a look at, the situation of groups and phasing things in over time in the same way that we did at the elementary school level, and trying to identify if there's any small situations that we could start to slowly bring in the same way that we are at the elementary level. And, very calculated small steps, especially in that arena where we have seen that, the kids are just more mobile and they're doing more. And as such, there's a lot of mixing that happens even outside of the schools. So all the cohorting in the world sometimes is strained by, the natural behaviors of kids outside of school, the mobile behaviors of middle and high school kids. So thanks for sharing, Rita. A couple other things I just didn't want to lose sight of. As I mentioned before, our focus is really on getting students into school on a daily basis, even if it's just on the abbreviated day schedule. That's kind of our big focus right now that we've kind of turned to based on everything that we've collected. But I don't want folks to think that we don't still have, aftercare in mind, and that the virtual program will remain. We have no reason to believe that it would change. I don't see it changing for the balance of this school year, as I mentioned earlier, unless something came along that told us that we weren't allowed to run it. I don't see that happening, but that would really be the only thing in my mind that would prevent it from continuing. And then I wanted to just kind of address the longer term. We talked about sort of the immediate, what we think we can work on really going into February and trying to accomplish in February. As we look forward to when might we be able to do something even beyond that, it's difficult to get the crystal ball out and predict this, as Dr. Spiesler kind of alluded to. When might we get to that 70% immunization, even if just among our teachers? I'm not really sure if or when that's going to happen in terms of this school year. But as I mentioned in some of the prior presentations to the board, perhaps around that fourth marking period timeframe, the spring period, maybe at that time we're seeing a good number of staff vaccinated. Perhaps things are going well in the state. Maybe we've even gotten from yellow to green. It's difficult to say, but optimistically, we're holding out some hope that's going to play out well for us as we hit the spring, the fourth marking period. And we don't want to give up our hope right now for some of the things that, Juliet talked about, right? Trying to have some normalcy to the end of the year and really hoping that, we get enough progress between now and May that the kids are getting to do some of the things that they traditionally do to end the year. And that would be, feels like a dream. Feels like it'd be a dream come true right now to see those things happening for our students. So, that's what we're hoping for. Whether it plays out, we have to see. But that's kind of what we're thinking in terms of long term. So we just wanted to wrap up quickly. Mr. Syatt was going to highlight some of the personnel things that are happening in support of this plan.
Thank you, Mr. Markarian. Yeah, so I know we've talked about this over the last couple of board meetings, that we had posted positions in our effort to try to staff to support this change to our instructional plan. So one of the things that the elementary principals have been hard at work at is identifying candidates. So we've been working together over the last month or so to try to look at our applicant pool and take into consideration that these positions are critical to make this plan work. So we were able to identify a combination of both internal candidates. These are folks who were instructional aides in our district who wanted an opportunity, who have a teaching certificate, and also external candidates who may be employed currently or may have just graduated. And so we kind of talked about, we've got some experienced folks coming in. We've got some novice teachers that we'll work with, and also some folks who were in our district who know our district as aides who are able to step in and help us. And so we're very thankful for that as well. So we have been successful identifying 4 first grade candidates, 3 second grade candidates, and then a 3rd and a 5th grade candidate. And that 3rd and 5th grade candidate, the purpose there is to help at a particular school with sectioning, to help balance the in-person students so that we've got safe class sizes so that we can continue to socially distance. And then of course, those other 7 staff members are to, of course, support this plan. So 9 staff members you'll see on the agenda tonight, either on the regular agenda or on the addendum. And those folks will all be approved, and then we'll start per the dates that Mr. Markarian shared. There are a couple of slight hangups, right? It can't be all perfect to find 9 good candidates. There are a couple of hiccups. One is that a couple of the folks, as I mentioned, are employed, so there might be a slight delay for a couple of them in a start date. We're not talking weeks, we're talking a matter of a couple of days here or there. We'll work with those folks and their employer to help the transition to be as smooth as possible. And moving forward, of course, the challenge, as Mr. Markarian referenced, is how could we continue to identify candidates for 3 to 5? And so we're looking at other measures that wouldn't involve hiring additional staff, because I can tell you it was quite a challenge to find these staff members. Very pleased with what we found, but I don't know that we'd even be successful in finding successful candidates at this point, because we kind of coincided with the graduation of colleges in January. So we were lucky to be able to pick up a couple of folks who were recent graduates there. So we were successful, and so we have the staff necessary to move forward with this plan. And then the next slide, Mr. Markarian, if you wouldn't mind, addresses, I know, a question that's come up about virtual teachers. So I know that particularly at the 6 to 12 level, there are some students that may have staff members who are all virtual. And so I just wanted to make a distinction for everyone in the two types of virtual staff members that we may have. Some of them are rolling virtual staff members because of the need to quarantine. And so those are what I put in this temporary category. And this can change day to day, minute to minute, as Mrs. Arabera knows. And so this list can be, you know, a very large list on any given date, but know that that list is never longer than 2 weeks, right? So now that individual, if someone is placed on that list, they generally return within 2 weeks because they've had to be held to that quarantine period, but that is temporary. Now, the other group that has been permanent, at least since the start of the school year, or has been on a remote assignment for a long period of time, are high-risk medical, as approved, of course, by Dr. Spiesler. And so these folks would be the only individuals who would be continued on this virtual assignment until such time that we begin to recall them. And so this is a conversation that we started to have about what is the appropriate time to recall the 6 to 12 staff who have virtual assignments right now, because they would be considered high-risk medical. I can tell you that number, total staff 6 to 12 that are on the high-risk medical category is less than 15, and that's across Annan and Ridge. And, you know, assuming conditions continue to improve and there's widespread availability of the vaccine, I would anticipate that it's very likely these staff would be recalled at some point this year. The other thing to keep in mind is we certainly have more staff who are virtual staff members, but of course that's born out of a necessity, right? When we initially sectioned the elementary grades, some of that was a necessity, a need, because we had a number of virtual students. So we had to have a cadre of K-5 teachers who were remote. Now, those teachers could certainly be recalled at any time should things change, but right now I don't envision that, because we've just asked the community about where they want their child to be, right? So that list is likely to stay until such time as there might be another change in the schedule. And then the $64,000 question, of course, that we've been discussing quite a bit in the last couple of weeks, I've talked with some folks about this, is the vaccine and how that might change which staff members are virtual and which are not, and how might that impact the group that I just talked about, and making it more widely available for our staff. So we certainly, one of the things we did is, of course, shared the New Jersey Department of Health link with our staff for them to be able to register for the vaccine. I know a number of them have. We've also found out that many of them are also getting vaccinated on their own. They're being successful in finding locations around the state that offer vaccines. And then the other thing that we'll start doing is looking to try to find out how many of our staff are getting vaccinated, so that we know and are in a position to begin to explore when we can start to look at a potential return, and also have a good idea of how many staff have been vaccinated. So right now we're encouraging staff to get vaccinated. That's why we sent that link out. But of course, as Dr. Spiesler alluded to, there's a capacity building issue with the vaccine right now, and very difficult to obtain a slot. As you know, Governor Murphy changed when educators and what group educators are in right now, right? They're in that extended group, essential employees extended group. So again, really not a lot known about the timeframe for the full-scale rollout for vaccinations for educators. But as information becomes available, I know we're sharing it, and we're also having conversations about the best way to make the information available to staff. All right, and that is it. I think that's the last slide. It is. So at this time, why don't we, since we have Dr. Spiesler here and Ms. Arabera, why don't we allow the board members to ask some questions if they have any?
Mr. Syed, would it be possible, or Mr. Markarian, to put us back so we can see everyone?
Yes. Let's see if I have rights to that.
It's just hard to call on people because I can only see 4 people at a time. I see Mrs. Korn. Go ahead, Mrs. Korn.
Hi, how you doing?
Jen, go ahead.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for all the hard work. I mean, it's, you know, I'd like to see us making progress going back to school, and I know we're doing it safely and all that. So my questions are, you know, when we talk about the close contacts, we have the positive cases, which are very low. We have almost no transmission inside of schools. Okay, so I'm looking at our database right now. So we have 1 in-school transmission, okay, and 2 extracurricular, but that could happen. I mean, and I'm assuming these are like real numbers. So, but we have like 689 close contacts, right? So to me, the close contacts, is there a way to, do we know how many of these close contacts actually turned out to be positive? I know I should have asked this question before. I apologize. I know you won't have it off the top of your head, but that's something I'd really like to know. How many of these close contacts actually came back as positive cases? Because especially in the schools, we're doing all this, and from the North Carolina study where they recommended that we're quarantining people who are wearing masks 6 feet apart. It's really a burden on the schools. And is there another way to look at this? If the close contacts are not coming back any positive cases, why? It almost sends the wrong message of that a kid's in school and then everybody he was around, even if they weren't even near him, have to quarantine for 14 days or 10 days now, I think is New Jersey. So that's just one of my questions. Also, with the risk rewards for being in school, I'm wondering if we're like, and I've asked this question before, I apologize for just hammering on this, but I know COVID is bad, but is mental health is that one of our risk rewards too? Because I'm not seeing it, I'm not hearing it. You know, I know we work on it, but like to get these kids back in school, and I know there's an article in New York Times, I'm just worried. I worry that it's an insidious thing that kids don't always tell you how they're feeling until it's too late, until you're struggling, until it's a real struggle, it's a problem. So, and I know we're trying to do this safely, but getting kids back in school is important for some. And I'm not saying some kids like the virtual, they're good, but a lot of kids don't. They're not thriving, and families are under a tremendous stress. Okay, so I know, and I know you're bringing up like the other. I don't want to hear about other strains until it's an issue, because I don't need to look into the future. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I don't know if I'm going to walk across the street and get hit by a car, right? Everything's open and it's all community spread. So I'm trying to wrap my head around. Stores are open. People can go to the movies now. You can go into restaurants and bars. You can do all this stuff, but we're punishing children when there's no transmission inside schools, because we're doing all this. We're doing a great job of all this. So I don't know what my question is. I'm like, how are we justifying this? You know what I'm saying? Because I hear stories all the time, and it's starting to really bother me. And I hear COVID, but I don't hear, well, are we on the precipice of something really bad? It's been 10 months, 11 months of kids not really being in school. We're trying our best, but they're not in school, and they're not really allowed to see their friends. And then there's this party that I hear about all the time. And now I read about people calling kids irresponsible. Their parents are not moral. They have no morals. But we don't know what was going on with those people. We don't know if their kids were like, if I don't get out of here, I'm doing something real bad to myself. No one knows what people are dealing with in their homes. So we have a lot of judging going on, and it coming from everywhere. So it really was starting to bother me that, you know, we closed school, which was smart, but vilifying and turning people in who got a virus into the enemy, into they're the bad ones, really is something that I feel like we have to like turn around a little bit, because you can get a virus anywhere. And I've been out there, people are everywhere. People are going about their regular lives every day. So I just want to know how we're gonna, how do we justify this, like, how can we do more for the kids? Because I feel like they're the ones, I just feel like they're the ones taking the brunt of all this. So, and the medically, like, you can tell me tons of people go to the hospital. I don't know. I know we don't want them to spread it around, and everyone has to be responsible and sacrifice, but it's been a long time. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just putting my frustration down. I'm trying to voice what I've been hearing from people. Thanks.
Any questions for Dr. Spiesler or for Mrs. Zarabera? Ms. Schaefer? I see you, Tim. I'll get you next.
Tim was first if you want to go ahead.
Tim, you want to go ahead?
All right. Mine is actually quick, and I'm just wondering.
Being so polite.
I'm just wondering if you have any indication. I mean, we're talking about the vaccine for adults and for the teachers and for all of us and our parents and everybody else, but is there anything on the horizon for kids? Have you heard anything about like the J&J vaccine being approved for younger age people or anything like that could translate into getting the kids vaccinated?
Okay. So the issue comes up is that the Moderna vaccine and the Pfizer vaccine, the Moderna vaccine is for, I believe, 16 and older, and the Pfizer vaccine is 18 and older. We know that children, because of their immunosystems are basically naive, they're actually processing the COVID-19 virus very effectively. We know that when we're born, our immune systems are incompetent, and we're being bombarded by tons and tons of viruses, bacteria, everything, and our immune systems process these things. So children in the elementary school and in kindergarten, and to some extent in the middle school, their immune systems are still developing. So when they're getting this COVID-19 virus, they're processing it just like any other virus. So they're really not getting sick as a result of it. Unfortunately, they can pass it on to adults, and that's where the biggest problem is. When an adult gets a COVID-19 infection, it's kind of like I compare it to like a store that's open versus closed. In the younger children, the store is open. Any virus could come in. And we see in the winter months, the non-novel COVID viruses. We've seen coronaviruses affect infants 2, 3, 4 months of age, never have a problem. However, this COVID-19 virus, to us as adults, the store is closed. We don't know what to do with it. So the people that are getting very sick as a result of it are having an exaggerated immune response, and the people that have underlying health issues are unfortunately being succumb to this virus because of their other health conditions that are being impacted by the virus itself. So it's really going to be unlikely that they're going to develop a vaccine for children, because most kids are going to be processing this thing, and basically they don't need a vaccine because its process is cleared. You know, I read an epidemiological report a number of years ago, and I want to respond to the first speaker, and I hear your frustration. I got a call this morning from one of my patients, 15-year-old. Mom needs a psychiatrist because she's very depressed. She can't see her friends, and a few times she said she was gonna commit suicide. And this is just the tip of the iceberg because I have a very small practice. So that we know that there are kids that are out there that are suffering as a result of school not being open. They need the interaction, and I'll speak as a pediatrician. It's just part of development that they have. But we have to look at the safety factor involved. And I think our transmission rates are low in school because we practice all these measures to keep our schools safe. So I think that's an important factor. Unfortunately, the mental health issue is collateral damage, and I hate to use that word, but that's really what it is when it comes to this virus. You know, when we look at the last pandemic, the flu pandemic of 1918, that pandemic lasted 2 years. You know, and I'd be very surprised if by the fall this thing is over. I don't think we're really going to be back to normal. And this is what a lot of the epidemiologists say, until really 2022. That's when things are really going to get back to normal, where you're going to see people walking around without masks, and social distancing will be a obsolete expression. But we need to give this thing some time, and we need to get everybody immunized So we get that herd immunity where we get 70% of the population immunized. We're not doing a great job with immunization. Hopefully we'll have the personnel, the federal government sent out all these doses of virus. And I always said, how would they expect to get into people's arm magically? Can't grab somebody off the street and be an immunizer. You can't do that. You have to be prepared, and they weren't prepared. They gave us the vaccine, but it's like a boat going out to sea with no gasoline in the engine. You're not getting very far. So we're hoping that some of these things come about. But you know, the issue comes up is that we need to do a better job with immunizing, and in the meantime, we need to control this virus the best we can. And social distancing, washing your hands, and wearing a mask are the three things that are going to keep this thing under control. Hopefully I answered your question.
I was just going to piggyback on that if I could. I agree with everything Dr. Spiesler said. Just to answer your one question, Mrs. Korn, we have had close contacts that have then tested positive. I don't have a number to give you, but that has happened. Some of the close contact is obviously in school. Some of it is outside of school. And we've seen, as we've just started with indoor athletics, we've already seen a number of transmissions related to that. So that certainly is a concern and something we're watching really closely. You know, I think it really is everyone's goal here to try to give the kids, you know, more of an educational experience and the athletics. We're all working really hard to do that because we know that it does affect their mental health, and we want them to see their friends and be back in school with their teachers. But again, it doesn't come without risks, right? Because the more you're around other people, the more you're close with other people, the more you're not wearing masks, the greater the chance of getting sick. And we have had people that are sick. I mean, we have staff members that are fairly sick. We've had people that are hospitalized. So, and I would say that their mental health also is a concern. I mean, I think a lot of staff members are anxious or concerned about bringing the virus back to their families or to their children or to spouses or family members that may be immunocompromised. I've had people on the phone crying in tears to me. So we are really very cognizant of that and trying to take all of those things into consideration.
I see Mr. Salmon was next, Mrs. White, and then we'll get to your question after that. Mr. Salmon?
For Dr. Spiesler and Ms. Barrett, are we going to align, or is the waiting for the Department of Education or something like that to give us an indication on how we can align our quarantine rules with whatever New Jersey has adopted for travel? So like for the CDC now says for interstate travel, you have to quarantine for 7 days with a negative test, or for 10 days without a test. But we are still requiring 14 days for close contact quarantines. And I don't know if that's a distinction between interstate travel versus close contact, or the only reason I'm asking this is that as we move the younger kids and eventually the older kids into full-time school, even on a half day, being out for 2 weeks and missing 10 days of school, administratively, we might have to move those kids into the virtual program or something like that, or ping pong them back and forth. But can we adopt the CDC's interstate travel quarantine regimen in place of what we have now? I'm not asking for an answer tonight. I'm just saying, is that something that we can talk about going forward, or is there something that is holding us to that 14-day quarantine right now?
Yeah, so the quarantine is 10 days for travel outside of New Jersey. And the recommendations are, even from the CDC, for quarantine are for congregate settings, which is obviously a school with a lot of people, is still 14 days. The New Jersey Department of Health says you should still quarantine for 14 days, particularly when you're in this high risk category. So while we're in this orange state, our health department has said that we should maintain the 14 days of quarantine. I think if that changes and we drop down to maybe the yellow level, then that could change. But right now, while we're in orange, they want us to maintain the 14-day quarantine for close contacts, and we're doing 10 days for travel.
Mrs. White?
I'm not really comfortable with ever using collateral damage when we're talking about children, my child, your child, anyone's child in this district. Right off the bat, that just, it makes me sick, I have to be honest. That being said, I do support bringing students back. I'm very pleased that we have the K in, that we've got a plan to bring in first grade and second grade. I'm glad that we are going to be bringing in smaller groups of students in grades 6 through 12. But knowing that we have students in this district whose mental well-being is at risk, what are we doing then to identify and address this and make this pool of students then a priority to be bringing in when we're saying we're going to be bringing in students in grades 6 through 12? Because I would think that rather than saying those students may be collateral damage, it is our responsibility to ensure that if what they need is to be in school, that we're bringing them into school as a priority group. And I'd also say, as a spouse of a teacher, no teacher's collateral damage either. It goes for them too.
I'm just going to jump in for a quick second and say I agree with everything that Mrs. White just said, and that's troubling and concerning. And I'll tell you right now, my phone is blowing up with furious parents at the notion that their potentially compromised, mental health compromised child is potentially viewed as just collateral damage of this situation. It's a tough choice of words. I see Mrs. McCune has her hand up, so I'll select you next.
Yeah, I was just going to say I also agree with what was just said. I think the challenge is, we've always looked at, students to see who's at risk academically, who's struggling, and identified those students and put supports in place for them. And, now with so many students being virtual, it's even harder to tell who's at risk for mental health issues. It was hard before, we've had so many different parent evenings and stuff about how to see warning signs and stuff for students even before the pandemic hit. So I think from the school's perspective, to identify those students is a real challenge. And I know we've discussed this at the Wellness Committee and at curriculum of trying to find who is struggling, not just because they're getting bad grades or something, but who is really struggling during this time. And how do you identify them? It's not just by their grades and whether they're turning their work in. They could be doing okay in their classes, but be really struggling, emotionally, and that might not be visible, from the teacher's end on Zoom. So I think it is a real challenge. I think we've been trying to talk about it, but it is really scary. And I agree that it has to be a priority when we're trying to figure out if we can bring back, groups of students who should come back. I think that has to be a focus.
I see Mrs. Richmond's hand.
I just also wanted to agree. I'm glad Mrs. White said what she said. I thought she said it very eloquently and articulately. I do think that we have had conversations in the curriculum committee that I've been on where they will be taking a look and trying to identify these kids. And as the teachers, the supervisors, the principals are all trying to pinpoint who those kids are. I hope that if you have a student who is struggling mightily, that a parent will reach out to a teacher or a supervisor or the counselor or somebody, just so that that student doesn't slip through the cracks, because we're all in this crazy virtual world, and I do think it is harder and harder to identify those students. And I agree with Ms. McCune that it's not just grades. I think people, their mental health and they're struggling, their social life has been, so many things have been taken away from them over this course of this year. And I really hope we can identify those kids, get them the help that they need, and get them back into school if that's what they choose to want to do.
Other board members with questions? No one else? Okay. I'm not sure what we're going to do here, Mr. Markarian. Does Ms. Fox maybe want to, or well, we have to go to public comment. Does anyone else want to say anything before we move to public? Yeah, I see him.
Okay.
Lauren, did I see your hand? I'm sorry, Ms. Beckman, did I see your hand up? Yeah.
I actually had a question on the presentation for Ms. Fox, if we're going to go there, or are we still working with Dr. Spiesler and
yes, absolutely.
Ms. Rivera? Is it okay?
Yeah, no, you can.
Oh, okay.
This is a time for any board member question.
Okay, good. So on the presentation, you talked, there was scenario 2, 6th to 12th grade, and you talk about the abbreviated days with no cohorts. Is that, do you have you decided on how the schedule is going to look like? Abbreviated schedule is going to be the block schedule that exists today with the virtual Wednesday, or are we going to try to bring them back 5 days?
No, that would be following the current schedule, the abbreviated day schedule that's in place now, right? Just with no cohorts.
Okay.
Any other questions on the presentation itself? Okay. So then with that, we will move on to our next agenda item, which is the is the superintendent's report. Mr. Markarian.
Thank you, Madam President. Beyond what we shared tonight, that's about all I have. I would draw your attention to one particular item I believe that is in the finance section, and I'll review that when we get to it. But other than that, our focus for tonight was obviously to talk about where we stand in our instruction plans.
Okay, and do we want to approve the new committees?
That's the only, I believe that's the only voting item.
And recognizing a new club.
Yes, one club.
So I guess we don't really need any introduction for that. For the public, the board reorganizes each January. And we did our election last time, and then this time we just reorganize the committees, the composition of the committees. So that's listed in our agenda. So I guess we need to call for a motion. Mr. Salmon and Ms. Korn. And then Mr. McLaughlin, can we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Beckman?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Salmon?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Korn?
Yes.
Mrs. McCune?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. With that, we're going to move to public comment. I just want to remind anyone who is unable to get into the Zoom for any reason, if you are writing your public comment, you must include your address or it cannot be read into the record of the meeting. With that, I'm just going to start with Ms. Fox and see if we have anyone in the waiting room.
Yes, we do. I'm going to let the first person in. It says Brianna Vick. He seems to be stuck in the waiting room. You like me to try to let the next person in? Okay.
Sure.
Next person is Sandra Bierstein.
Yes, please.
Hello, Ms. Bierstein. Welcome to the meeting. We can, it looks like you're connected. Can you hear us? Looks like Brianna made it in. Brianna, can you hear me? She's muted. Would you like me to let the next person in, Mrs. Gray? Okay.
Yes, please.
I'm admitting Keith Molinari.
Just as a reminder for those who are watching, I don't know if this is the issue or not, but sometimes those who are watching the live stream forget to, if you get in, forget to turn their live stream volume off so that there isn't feedback between the Zoom and the live stream.
It's on delay, so if they're watching that, they won't know that they've been called.
Okay, that's true. It looks like maybe, oh, I was going to say it looked like Ms. Vick was coming in.
It did. She's connected. She's just muted, as is Ms. Bierstein.
So Brianna or Sandra?
Okay.
Oh, we lost somebody.
We lost somebody.
We can always come back to them after reading comments too.
Right. Well, we have a few more, Mr. Markarian, so I'll let the next one in. Gina's iPhone.
How much is the delay?
I'm not sure.
Delay.
Pretty significant because I watch it on both, and it's a bit of a while before it goes to the next thing.
So Mrs. Fox, when you're telling them to come in, if they're just watching you on a delay, they don't know for 5 minutes, 3 minutes?
I mean, they know if they're looking at this device that they're signing in with because they're getting into the meeting.
But again,
so
I think
depends on what they're watching.
With signing into the meeting and
I think so too.
Doing
watching the YouTube.
Yeah.
Right, and doing the speed. Yeah, and wanting to.
I think some people maybe they think they need to be in both to watch the live stream.
Right. So Gina's phone just left. The next one has a number for the name, so I'll let that one in.
Well, we can ask them to identify themselves if they connect. Correct.
Brianna, are you ready to unmute and share your public comment?
So then the most recent one is connected, just muted. There's no name. So if that person is able to hear us, you can make your public comment now as well. If not, I'll let the next one in. The next one is Viv Node. That one is joining and not connecting.
Can you Can you tell if someone is interested in commenting or who is just accidentally in the Zoom rather than the...
I just see a name on a list.
You can't tell.
Right.
Okay. So possibly there are people who are watching through the Zoom rather than through the live stream on YouTube who have no interest in making a public comment.
Possibly. As you can see, Miss Bierstein just left. So now I'm going to try Joshua Scribner.
At the beginning of the meeting, we're posting both links. And so if you join one, then join the other and start watching.
Looks like Mr. Scribner.
Hi, Mrs. Fox. I hope you can hear me.
I can hear you. Thank you for joining us.
Great. Hi, my name is Josh Scribner.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. 6 Lincroft Drive in Basking
Ridge. Do me a favor, Mr. Scribner, and tell people exactly what you did to
I turned on Zoom. The moment I watched Zoom on the side, and when it came on, I muted the YouTube and said hello.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'm speaking up tonight to commend the teachers and the nurses and the leadership team, Nick and the principals, on ensuring that learning has continued during this unprecedented school year. On the 100% virtual elementary side, we can see the positive effects of their work, and my second grader is able to learn. And as hard as things are, together, we are making it work. I understand that many parents are eager to get kids back into school full time. I see your signs up and down Lions all the time. Such a thing, though, can only be imagined because 45% of us keep our kids home. It's only possible because my child is one of 28 in his virtual class. And yet, around town, I see kids walking together without masks. I see them playing musical cars, cramming 4 or 5 to a car without masks. I see them in the news about the parties they are attending indoors, and I get it. They're kids. So it's up to us as parents to set the golden example, especially as the numbers remain high and vaccines remain a long way off for most of us. So I ask again that the district ensure equitable resources are applied to the half of the district that's fully remote, especially mental and social programs. And I would ask that for parents pushing to get their kids into school, demonstrate to them the safe practices necessary during a global pandemic. Maybe I'm judgy, but none of our kids are collateral damage. Not mine and not yours. And now is not the time to let our guard down. Thank you.
Thank you. There's one more person in the waiting room. I will let Kristen Gannon in right now. It looks like she's trying to connect with audio. There we go. And now she's muted. Hello, Miss Gannon. You're in the meeting and we can see you, but you're muted. So if you want to unmute, you can make your comment now. It should be in the bottom left of your screen. There. Oh.
Is it possible for the host to unmute?
No.
Another participant?
I can ask her to unmute, but she's there. We go.
Okay, thank you. My son helped me.
Good. That's good.
My name is Kristen Gannon, and I live at 4 Woodstone Road. Members of the board and Mr. Markarian. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, she can hear me. I am pleading with you to not become complacent with our virtual learning situation. You refer to learning options in our district as either 100% virtual or a hybrid model, but the hybrid model of instruction is in reality a 100% virtual model of instruction that just takes place both at home and in school. My kids travel to the high school 2 half days per week. Once in their classroom, they sit down at their desks, open their laptops, put in their headphones, and log onto Zoom. With the teacher right in front of them, they're required to log into Zoom and learn online. We all need to acknowledge that this is not acceptable and it isn't working. If we do not, then what will stir us to push forward and do better and get back to where we were before the pandemic? Hybrid students who have been clinging to their 2 half days at the school are letting go. There are less kids in the school building every week. Online at school or online at home in my pajamas, it's all online. What's the point? Plus, it is no secret that it is easier to get good grades if you are 100% virtual. Students are settling into a life of endless screen time, whether they are in school or at home. In both models, students take naps at home during study halls and advisory periods. Their brains fried from the screens. They're isolated from their friends. There is no hands-on or face-to-face learning, no labs, no pencils, no paper. All kids and all teachers need to be physically in school together with no screens between them. This is the proven model of education in our country for which there is no acceptable substitute. And if we fail to recognize that the current hybrid virtual model is an absolute abomination of what education in Bernards Township has been for so many years, then we are destined to fail our children even more than we already have. We must push to do better. What we have now is not okay. Governor Murphy knows it. On January 11th, he once again waived exit exam requirements for graduating high school seniors because the fact is they are not learning and neither is any grade below them. There are rumblings of the 2021-2022 school year, not looking much different than where we are today, even with a vaccine. Please do not become victims of inertia and please do not let our children become casualties or, as we heard tonight, collateral damage of inertia. Keep your eyes on the prize, which is 5 full days, every child back in school, just like the New Jersey private schools have been doing successfully since September of 2020. It is possible. Thank you.
Thank you. So there's no one else in the waiting room. There are just those 2 other people who are still in our meeting that are muted.
I think they're like a mistake. I don't think they're supposed to.
I agree. I can move them back to the waiting room. Or
okay, that probably is a good idea. And then Mr. Syatt, what do we have in terms of written public comment?
We do have written public comment. Are you ready for that now?
I think we are.
Okay, all right. So in an effort to try to be efficient in reading these comments, I'm cognizant of the fact that there are multiple comments and our 45-minute time limit. So I do read them a little more quickly so that we can ensure that they're all fitting into that appropriate time slot that we have. So I will begin public comment now. The first public comment is from Allison Galusha at 80 Shannon Hill Road. Dear board members, at the last board meeting, the community was assured that tonight there would be details regarding the plan to get kids back to school with target dates. We spent a lot of time hearing negative comments from some board members, and we could all see the eye rolls. On the flip side, since then, we have seen amazing action from our community, specifically in the signs posted throughout the town and the 862 signatures on the back to school petition demanding action. We have also read the news that Governor Murphy is relaxing school restrictions to get our kids back in school, and we have seen action from other schools to do so. We are closing in on a year soon and nothing has changed. We continue to see and hear a lack of ingenuity and planning to get our kids back to school. For example, we continue to hear that lunch is an impediment to going back to school. We have heard no plans or options to overcome that issue. I conducted some research on how other large districts have gone back to school full-time and offered lunch to the students. Here's what I discovered. More than 80% of open schools now offer food via drive-through pickup and walk-up services. Prepackaged lunches in bags and boxes are being offered. 2, schools are offering breakfast and lunch items at different times throughout the day. 3, schools are offering portable locations for students to eat. They are allowing a portion of the students to eat lunch in the cafeteria and have set up other designated areas, including the classroom, for the students to eat at acceptable times. Another example, If there are issues with space, portable trailers or outside tents can be set up on the school campus to allow for other areas to teach classes. I have seen numerous schools using these outdoor spaces properly heated. And in fact, I went to a large high school where space was always an issue. Our school set up mobile learning centers outside. The students were excited when they had a class in the alternative space. This is not a novel solution, and it is one that can easily be implemented. We have all had to adapt, and sitting home behind a computer screen is far from adaptation. You have the ability to turn things around, and we implore you to shift your mindset to prioritize the students. Next public comment is from Yulia Gogi at 76 Liberty Corner Road. I would like to express my gratitude to the district officials who consistently make the right decisions in the face of this difficult school year. I cannot fathom how difficult it is to design educational plans in the face of such adversity. I represent the segment of the population that isn't visible through lawn signs. I don't attend meetings regularly because I have to work. All I can do is pay attention and pray that you make the right decisions. I'm grateful for your commitment to science, integrity, safety, and reason. I'm thankful that my son will not be placed into a fully packed classroom for full days, 5 days per week, where 6 foot spacing is absolutely unattainable. I'm grateful that Bernard's administration understands that a vaccine will not be readily available for children until the beginning of the next school year, at best. You value the lives and wellness of our children and educators by providing the best form of instruction within the constraints of safety in a pandemic. I thank you for your research integrity and unwavering sensibility in the face of the irrational fragment of the population that continues their reprehensible battle. Please continue to stay on track and stay the course using reason and advice from our government and health officials with gratitude. Next public comment is Libby West at 35 Prospect Avenue. Simultaneously with the return to school that simply needs to occur, is there a plan to add additional learning time, possibly summer school, to make up for the fact that curriculum is 2.5 months behind previous years? We realize that high school students can never catch up as just too far along, but is there any plan to address these failures so they can at least be minimally prepared for college level classes? Next public comment is from Jamie Fiore Higgins at 64 Atlas Road. I'm resending this email that I sent to Mr. Markarian and copied Ms. Gray last week. I didn't get a response. Hi, Mr. Markarian. I hope this email finds you well. I'm a parent of 6th grade twin girls on the gold team at William Adden. As you advised in your email, most of their teachers are under quarantine through the end of the month. I'm trying to understand the series of events that led to this. I know there's a gold student who has COVID. I also know that my daughters were not labeled as close contacts. CDC guidelines define a close contact as someone who is within 6 feet of an infected person for a cumulative total of 15 minutes or more over a 24-hour period. Are we not following CDC guidelines? According to my children, they are never that close to their teachers for that period of time, perhaps a minute or two for a quick question. I find it hard to believe that all these teachers have had that much exposure to this child when my children indicate they are never near their teachers. Please define the criteria that was used to require the teachers to quarantine. Next public comment is Keith Molinari. It's 27 Franklin Drive. The district is not following the guidelines. It is exceeding them to the detriment of getting the students back to school. Waiting on the vaccine in state being green, yellow was never the standard, and having the district physician say the school lunch is a breeding ground for the virus is disingenuous at best. Where's the data on that? The problem with the transmission is not in school, as data point after data point has shown. The district seems to be looking for a level of risk that is unattainably low. The status quo is unacceptable, and at the pace of this phased-in approach, this will be another lost year. The next public comment is Stacy Letty at 67 Spencer Road. I would like to know how many cases of actual in-school transmission we have had. It seems that the transmission is in people's homes. The longer the kids are out of school, the more they gather. It seems they aren't getting it at school. So keeping them home isn't working. Why can't those that want to send their kids to school do so, and those who want to keep their kids home can do so for the rest of the year? Why is choice being taken away for all? What's the plan for extracurricular activities in the spring? Maybe keeping them busy would keep them from gathering. Dr. Spieser is failing to take into account that the impact on their mental health is much greater than the risk of them getting COVID. Next public comment is from Lauren Zagal at 28 Meadowview Road. Upon completing the requested commitment for decision-making for the district's plan, it was asked if we could send our children 5th, 7th grade respectively, based on scenario A and 100% virtual, or scenario B and 100% virtual. This was a challenging task without having additional information regarding morning and aftercare, busing, class numbers, teacher assignments, etc. But in the best interest of the district, we completed the commitment. I attended the Q&A sessions and answered the commitment the best that I could with the information you provided. As you can imagine, as parents both working outside of the household, these are very, very challenging times. We have had limited options and want more in-person options if they can be delivered safely. After hearing the presentation tonight, however, I am more concerned than ever. First question, did you say that there would be a chance that a parent sending their child into school would have the possibility of their child going into another room to work virtually and not be with their class? If so, how would that decision be made? It would be a big calculated risk for us to send our children into a classroom of 17 students, which was the number given for 5th grade, and having our child not be in the same room with the teacher and classmates. This seems to negate the benefits of in-person instruction. Again, with no option for subscription busing, no morning care, aftercare, and no lunch offer, this is already a big ask for working parents. But so is leaving them home alone on virtual days, which is what many parents need to do under the current plan. Second question, when will we know if 6-foot distance will be available in our children's classroom? That will affect our decision making. The most recent guidance from the NJDOH for schools is very clear about the benefits of 6 feet distancing and cohorting, which greatly limits the chance of close contacts and related class and school closures. We understand that it's an impossible task to make this situation work for families. You keep mentioning making schools available daily for families who want that, but with the lack of details. I'm concerned this actually provides my family with less options. Next public comment is from Megan Fedor, who actually sent 2 comments, but I'll read them both. Please reconsider having staff development on Wednesdays. Wednesdays are WAMs and the high school's only full days. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday are half days for these children. Why can't the staff development be on one of those days? Yes, the teachers have tutorials for any child who wants to attend on the half days, but these tutorials are not mandatory. Shouldn't we focus on actual class time? These children need more class time. I forgot to mention her address, 26 Victoria Drive. Her second comment, no date for 6 to 12 students. What about the social and emotional well-being of these teenagers? Because they are more mobile, they are the perfect candidates for listening and following instruction. Kindergartners don't know how to social distance. Please, these kids need school. They need social interaction. Didn't you see what is happening with the suicides? This is unacceptable. Next public comment is from Lynn Noisky at 39 Linden Drive. Hello, Mr. Markarian and BOE members. I think we can all agree our children have lost valuable learning time. Can we please prioritize core subjects, language arts, math, science, and social studies in person? Our children love specials, but they're not critical subjects, and we have to recognize the importance of using our in-person time wisely. Thank you. Next public comment is from Cynthia Kirchner at 16 Lenape Court. Dear Mr. Markarian and board, I'm happy to hear the elementary school is going to get more school time in the near future. However, it doesn't seem like there is any current plan to get kids back full time. Chances are we may never be green again. What is your plan to reopen the schools full time? Do you anticipate this will happen in the fall? You mentioned not having adequate PPE, such as barriers, after almost a year. I'm concerned if we continue this way, my kids will still be part-time students in the 21-22 school year, and we may need to consider a different school system. A response would be appreciated. Next public comment is from Lisa Proust at 85 Springhouse Lane. Dear Mr. Markarian and BOE members, the CDC and state requirements for quarantining within 6 feet for a total of 15 minutes or more with someone affected with COVID-19, providing care to someone who is sick with COVID-19, direct physical contact, shared eating or drinking utensils. Can you please comment on why there are so many close contacts at a school when everyone is supposed to be social distancing 6 feet apart and wearing masks? Additionally, Governor Murphy just updated the guidelines for the state. Are we taking these updates into consideration? The next public comment is from Barbara Geary at Dryden Road. When K-5 returns, will specials be in the classroom with the students, or will that remain on a Zoom class while in school? If yes, can specials be moved to the afternoon and science and social studies be in the morning sessions? Even if science social studies continue with the current format, at least the teachers can introduce the lessons or answer questions. Can you clarify learning labs? Can we avoid this by having the desks 2 to 4 feet apart? The New Jersey rollback plan permits desks less than 6 feet apart. The next public comment is from Susan Vasallo, 14 Oxbow Lane. She had 2 comments. I'll read them both. Thank you, Jen Korn. You are the only one who is speaking up for students and providing common sense. We appreciate you. Next comment from Sue Vasallo. Excuse me, mental health and teen suicide is collateral damage. I will give him the benefit of the doubt to correct that, but honestly, that was a very alarming statement for a physician. Next public comment is Stacy Molinari at 27 Franklin Drive. Dear Mr. Markarian and BOE, thank you, Mrs. Korn. I agree with everything you said tonight, especially about unnecessary quarantining those who wear a mask and are outside 6 feet. Mr. Markarian, you are ignoring the other health concerns of the adolescents and teens, and they need to be addressed, especially social and emotional. Doctor, please share more information about Mrs. Corn's question about how you justify withholding school from 6 to 12 with facts and data. Everything I have read says in-person school is essential and should be a priority. Thank you. Next public comment is from Jennifer Santalanza, 22 Cherry Lane. Thank you to Mrs. Corn and other board members for raising the concern regarding balancing the impact of isolation and educational deficit on our children with the risks of COVID. A year of our children's lives and the long-term impact to them and society should be taken very seriously as the plan to return to school is implemented. Let's see. Next public comment is from Daria Bendikine at 86 Childs Road. First of all, I want to say thank you, Mrs. Corn, for being the only board member who has consistently advocated for our students. I absolutely agree with everything you've been saying. It's a shame you're the only one fighting for our children. Thank you, Mrs. Corn. I have the following questions. When so-called advisory periods are going to be replaced with instructional time, it is incomprehensible that 20% of already short day is wasted. 2, could you please share the results of the most recent survey, i.e. what is the percent of 612 students who committed to scenario 1 and 2? Is the most recent decision to keep the so-called status quo consistent with what the majority of hybrid students want? Next public comment, Sundari Rao, 5 Ross Lane. Thank you to the board members, admins, principals, nurses, and teachers for every decision made in keeping children and their families safe. We do understand children do not get COVID in the schools, but staying virtual does help reduce the spread in our township. As parents, it is up to us to keep a tab on our child's screen time. As a parent, I would also have play dates, hangout times outside of school for them to have social interaction. Hoping we all get vaccinated soon and look forward to the safe rest of the school year. Thank you. Next public comment is from Lori Kennedy, 124 Penwood Road. Echoing what public commenter Kristen Gannon said, it seems being a hybrid student is basically equivalent to being a virtual student. My student was the only one in her class and said the teacher didn't know what to do with me as I was the only one there. I had to log into class just like if I was at home, but I was sitting by myself in the classroom. I asked, did the teacher have anyone on one-on-one conversations with you? Answer, nope. There was a better way to teach the student that was actually in class, no matter the numbers are increasing for those going all virtual. And that is the last public comment I have.
Thank you, Mr. Syed. Just as a double check, Ms. Fox, was there anyone who had joined the waiting room?
No.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Markarian, is there anything that you would like to try to address at this time?
Yeah, I just wanted to respect Dr. Spiezer's time and Ms. Zarabera's time. Is there anything that either of you heard in public comment that you could maybe add some light to? Rita, maybe in particular with the close contact definition that you've been working on with the health office in respect to what happens when there's a student in a classroom, even if there's only, I'll make up a number, 7 or 8 people in the room. Why is it that everyone in the room is identified as a close contact if someone in the room is positive?
Sure. So we've talked to the health department about that, and their guidance is that if we have people together and there's one person that tests positive in that group, that even if they're not 6 feet or less than 6 feet apart for 15 minutes, but if they've had prolonged exposure, so most of our students in a class are there for 40 minutes plus, so it's a longer period of time in an enclosed area with shared air, shared space, that they feel, because again, we're in this high risk category, that we should quarantine everyone in the class. That if we want to keep the schools open, as we are now anyway, that we should be conservative and do that so that we can continue to stay open. So you know, there are a good deal of schools surrounding us in surrounding communities that have closed repeatedly for 2 weeks because they've had positive cases. That, you know, the guidance says if you have 2 positive cases in a school, you should shut down for 2 weeks. And we really haven't done that. We've stayed open. We've only had an incident at Liberty Corner where we shut for a few days, and we closed Ridge for a week. That was only obviously a week ago when we came back, or we were supposed to come back after the December break. And I really think the reason for that is because we've been really careful. and we've quarantined. Now, it's horrible to have to tell so many students or staff members that they can't come in. But again, we have had some of those close contacts then test positive as well. So we're doing it. We're following the guidance that we're given, and we're trying to be really careful so we can stay open.
Yeah, I know. Thank you. We've heard that question a couple of times, so thank you for clarifying.
Now, I just want to mention one of the things that was brought up a number of times was about the mental health issue. And the American Academy of Pediatrics has done a lot of research with isolation and mental health. And I don't want the public to think or the board to think that I don't think this is an important issue. When I say collateral damage means addition to what we're already seeing physically, what happens with these children. Certainly mental health issues are a critical piece. We know that screen fatigue, headaches are all things that are being investigated by the researchers and some of the scientists that are involved with this pandemic. But I don't want people to think that we should minimize the mental health issue that occurs with this. As I mentioned, I had one of my patients this morning that I was concerned with, a 15-year-old that had signs of depression and anxiety and even thoughts of suicide. So we know that these things are out there. I think identification is a key piece. Parents need to be aware of this. They need to be watching their children for any kind of strange types of behavior or the things that we've identified, so that we could take the proper interventions during this very difficult period when we are virtual and trying to maintain that balance between a quality education as well as maintaining the health of all of our students. Thank you.
Okay, I was just skimming through, looking for medical comments or questions that were raised. And I think those were the two that came up a couple of times. So if none of the board members have any other comments or questions, I just want to thank Dr. Spiesler and Ms. Zarabera for being available and for being so generous with your time tonight. We appreciate your assistance, your knowledge, and I just really appreciate the time you've given us. So thank you both very much for coming tonight, and we'll be talking soon, I'm sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thanks. So with respect to some of these other questions, the topic of dates, target dates came up again a couple of times. You know, I think that we're pretty specific in what we want to try to get done at the K-5 level. I understand the 6-12 level was not as specific in terms of dates. I tried to explain why we're looking at metrics there that are difficult to pinpoint. So I admit, I agree, there is not a specific date for a call to action specifically for the middle school and the high school right now. In terms of summer learning, that is something that we're taking a look at with respect to our budget for the summer of 2021, which is part of the 21-22 budget that begins July 1st. So we'll be talking about that in our budget presentations to see what we might be able to budget for opportunities for some summer learning. And we have to figure out criteria for that. And the question of transmission came up a few times with respect to the transmission in school. We are trying to be very accurate in tracking that data, and we are posting that on the district webpage. Currently, I believe the total number is 3. We had 1 transmission in a school at the high school. That was during the instructional day. And there were 2 others associated with co-curricular athletics at the high school as well. And that, you know, kind of speaks a little bit to our willingness to feel like it's safer to move, especially in the K-5 level first. There was a question about exact distances in classrooms. Will there be 6 feet of social distancing. You know, honestly, we are striving for the greatest amount of social distancing we can achieve. Is it going to be exactly 6 feet everywhere? You know, obviously it's a competition between putting more students in a classroom and maintaining a large distance between students. You can't have one and the other simultaneously if the classroom square footage is fixed. So as class size goes up, you're going to reduce the amount of space between students. And the best that we can do is try to mitigate that by looking at some alternative spaces where we have larger classes, perhaps by reassigning some students as we have done at the elementary level, and by taking advantage of additional barriers. Where we have made decisions to add students and increase class size, we have bought more barriers. So at the K-1-2 level, we did order and receive barriers for all of those classrooms to use as class size goes up when students are brought back to the classroom. As a function of what we're talking about tonight, we are certainly able and willing to order more barriers as necessary for increasing class size. Obviously, taking a look at those numbers in response to the selection form helps us to understand how much we need. And obviously we have to take advantage of building administrators who handle the scheduling in their buildings and simply order what it is that they're asking for when it comes to more desk barriers for students. And that's what we've done. Tell us what you need and we order it for them. On the subject of staff development on Wednesdays, why is staff development on Wednesdays? I certainly appreciate the fact that it's another disruption, if you will, in the course of an already difficult year. However, there's a lot going on that the staff are trying to learn a lot of different softwares and things of that nature to try to do their jobs well. And so we do try to make time for them to do that. We have traditionally done that on Wednesdays. In typical years, we have done one Wednesday early dismissal per marking period. We've picked 4 dates during the course of the year to do that. This year, we took a little bit of a different approach because the schools were on such different schedules and handling things in a variety of different ways by grade level and so on. So we gave them more latitude to pick and choose when they were going to do their PD. And the reason that Wednesdays have traditionally been used is because that's the day that department meetings and faculty meetings by contract extend the teacher's day by an hour. And so when we take advantage of that Wednesday hour and combine it with that abbreviated day, we get a larger chunk of time to do the PD with the staff. Certainly we've heard the message that it's been a disruption, and we're seeking to minimize the amount of PD days, but we do have cause, and I think just cause, to try to provide some time for our teachers where we can. We'll certainly work to minimize that. We understand in a normal year when we send kids home early for PD, and in this crazy year when we're not doing instruction for PD, we understand. We'll try to minimize that. I don't know if you want to speak to special scheduling at all at the elementary level, Ms. Fox.
So do you mean the question that asked if we would be
like specials in the afternoon,
yeah,
the ratio?
Were 2 questions. One talked about prioritizing core subjects, and another one talked about whether we'd be having the specials in class,
right,
or not. And so with the scenario 2 that we're looking at, we are not looking at changing the schedule at this time, but maintaining the schedule as is. To the question about prioritizing core subjects, that is the way the schedule was designed, to prioritize reading, writing, mathematics, with the 30-minute special built into the schedule for a variety of reasons, including some social and emotional interaction, a focus on special areas that can be an enjoyable part of the day for students, as well as the way we manage our building schedule. So with the scenario 2, we won't be changing that at this time.
Right.
The question about special area teachers coming into the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
We've certainly talked about that periodically and tried to consider when that might be safe. And we are making some movement in those areas, but not all of the specials. So we are looking for some of the specials area teachers to begin potentially moving into the classroom as we make these changes, but those are sort of in the works as we speak.
Thanks. Okay. I think that's all I have, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Markarian. With that, our next item is the approval of minutes. If I could have a motion, please. Mrs. McCune and Mrs. White, and Mr. McLaughlin, if we could have a roll call, please.
Ms. Beckman?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Salmon?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Korn?
Yes. Yes.
Mrs. McCune?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Madam President?
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. With that, we move to our next item, which is the Finance Committee report. Mr. Salmon?
Yes. Finance met on Wednesday, January 20th. The first item for discussion was an update on the Aramark custodial grounds maintenance contract. The district will be going out to bid in the spring. We did discuss the potential for increased costs due to the unionization of labor by the vendors that may bid on the contract. So we discussed a mix of contractual rates and personnel levels that might allow us to reduce the projected impact of costs, but we will be hearing from Mr. Gerichter from Advocate, who is the district's food and grounds consultant at the next Finance Committee meeting, more about the potential impact of this increased costs on our grounds and maintenance contract. The next item was a discussion of the state healthcare new law under Chapter 44, which is the New Jersey Educators Health Plan. Mr. McLaughlin went over some of the enrollees and the projected enrollees and projected costs in the New Jersey Educators Health Plan and how that might impact what the budget would be for health benefits for the 2021-2022 school year. The next item was an update on the Ridge High School sanitary lines project. Mr. Perrin, who's the Assistant Director of Facilities, joined the meeting and updated us and told us that all the restroom facilities and sanitary lines at Ridge are fully functional. All of the pipe work and testing is complete, and the contractor should have been finishing punch list items by the end of next week. The flooring in the hallway between the cafeteria and old gym is what's called a material called VCT, which is the standard flooring used in schools. However, the rest of Ridge is the flooring is terrazzo. So we will be replacing the VCT with terrazzo at a point in the future, but this is not an urgent project because the VCT is fine for right now. The next update was about the WAM Science Lab project. Mr. McLaughlin is finalizing the contractor with the contractor that was awarded the bid and expects to have a kickoff meeting with the project team in late February. The next item was an update on the Oak Street School gutters and leak when it rains. Mr. Perrin is working with Tony Catana from Spiesel, the district architect, to finalize the drawings for the interim gutter repair, which involves extending portions of the flashing beyond the eaves of the roofing to prevent water from running down the building exterior and into a section of the auditorium and the ladies' restroom near the school entrance. Mr. Perrin explained that the drawings should be completed this week and we'll get ready to go out for pricing. The next item, the last item up for discussion was the potential state aid concerns based on our declining enrollment. We are projecting a flat budget for state aid in 21-22. State aid is driven by enrollment, and enrollment is down almost 6% from last year. Dr. Grip, the school demographer, predicted enrollment to be at 4,934 students this year, and the actual enrollment was 4,839 at the annual October 15th head count. And obviously, the enrollment this year was affected by the pandemic, students going to private schools or withholding kindergartners. So that might not be a true number, but we'll get a better idea of the enrollment at in October of this coming year. In terms of the agenda items, there are 10. The first 3 are standing items. 4th is professional development. 5 through 7 are student services. Number 8 is a contract with the Y to use their pool for swim team practice. And number 9 is to acknowledge the receipt and disbursement of non-public security aid for non-public schools like St. James that are in the district right now. There is also an addendum, which, so the district is accepting a donation from Regeneron in the amount of $2,000 to be used for costs and busing for various extracurricular science and technology organizations. And this was due to a student at Ridge, Angelina Zhu, winning what used to be called, when I was a kiddo, the Westinghouse Prize. Then it was called the Intel Prize, and now it's called the Regeneron Prize. So congratulations to Angelina, and thank you so much. And it's very interesting to see the change of the name of this prize and how it reflects what's going on with science and technology in the world today. So congratulations, Angelina. Thank you so much. And hopefully we'll hear from her or more about her project at some upcoming meeting or committee meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Salmon. Any questions for Mr. Salmon? Okay, if we could have a motion and a second. Ms. Beckman and Mrs. Korn. And then Mr. McLaughlin, could we please have a roll call?
Ms. Beckman?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Salmon?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Korn?
Yes.
Mrs. McCune?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Our next report is the Personnel Committee report. The Personnel Committee met on last Friday, the 22nd. Most of what was not confidential was already shared in the presentation. I'm just double checking to see if there's anything. The only thing that I can add, which is little, is that it is with regard to the 2021 staffing forecast, it's a little too early for projections at what that might look like. So I apologize, there isn't much more. We covered the vaccine, and we covered the section of the presentation Mr. Syed gave. Our next meeting, I actually don't have the date, Mr. Syed, so I think it's going to be that 3rd Friday in February, but off the top 19th. Of my head, I don't know the date.
The 19th.
Thank you. It'll be February 19th. And we have 22 items.
30 items to be addendum.
We have an addendum, right? So we have 30 items for approval. If someone would make a motion, please. Mrs. Richmond and Ms. Schaefer, thank you. And then Mr. McLaughlin, another roll call, please.
Beckman?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Salmon?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Korn?
Yes.
Mrs. McCune?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Madam President.
Thank you. Our next item is the policy committee report. Mrs. Korn.
Hi. Just before I read the report, I just want to say thank you to all support people are giving me, but I also want to say that I know for a fact and from experience that everyone on the board really cares about kids and getting them in school and cares about their mental health, and so does the staff and the administration. They've been really, really good. So I just wanted to put that out there as a caveat. And here's the report. We met on, the policy committee met on January 11th. We discussed the return to instruction, which Mr. Markarian went over, but I'll just, because the instructional program is related to policy 1648, which is the return to instruction plan. So it's necessary to connect the procedure to policy. So the 2 plan alternatives that were sent out to the parents were also sent to Roger Jinks and his staff at the Somerset County Superintendent's Office with any language changes highlighted. There had been some confusion and mixed messaging regarding whether the county superintendent, quote unquote, approves our plans. And it was explained that they have a checklist with which to compare our plans, and then they can check the boxes and show our plans meet the criteria of the checklist. At this point, the plans are in the draft stage and not ready to be posted on the website. Once the choices are made by parents and a plan can be finalized, it can be posted. As Mr. Markarian reported, we haven't gotten all the answers in yet. The numbers, meaning how many choose an in-school plan versus virtual, as well as virus positivity, will dictate which plan can be implemented and the timing of the implementations. The choices were due by January 15th. The plans may look different for the elementary schools, where virus numbers have been relatively low, and the middle school with moderate virus numbers, in the high school, which has had a significant spike in the last couple of weeks, but this is about 3 weeks ago. As stated in the SOS that Mr. Markarian sent out to the community on the January 8th, there were a couple of Q&As that explained the different plans that happened on Monday, January 11th. January 8th and Monday, January 11th. Questions could have been or emailed. It was similar to a public comment at the board meeting, and they were answered by Mr. Markarian and Ms. Fox on a live Zoom feed to YouTube. And they were also taped, so if you missed it, you could go to the website and look up the tape. Hold on, I think I messed up my pages here. Where am I? Okay. The next thing was the health data that we posted to the website. There had been some concerns raised by parents regarding the health data posted on the website, cataloging the daily positive COVID tests among students, staff in each school. Since parents may be looking at the numbers to see what the spread is at the school their children is attending, it was suggested that the virtual and blended numbers are posted separately. It was agreed that including more information would be a benefit for those using the data to make informed decisions regarding school. So Mr. Colmer volunteered to construct a table that breaks the information down by school, by week, to show trending data. This would be in addition to the daily numbers already being shared. Parents will have access to a weekly tallies as well as percentage positive for each school, and that's what's posted now as our dashboard. In-school transmission numbers will be added. The terms positive and presumed positive and close contacts are defined on that site. It was decided that breaking out the blended virtual numbers did not make sense. The numbers are more reflective of community spread than in-school transmission, which are virtually non-existent. Being a virtual student does not limit a student's ability to be involved in extracurriculars such as sports teams, school and club, school clubs, band, etc. This would also put them in contact with students attending school. Therefore, virtual and blended students will be reported out together. It was also emphasized that these numbers are only as good as what is being reported to the health department and the nurses' offices. We spoke about the vaccination, and this was also spoken about earlier, that there's an effort for the state to have school districts distribute the vaccine to their staff. As of now, there's no policy requiring staff or students to be vaccinated. In the future, whether it was mandated by the state or deemed necessary by the administration, it may have to be revisited. Let me see, where am I? I'm getting all right. And then we talked about policy 8441, care of injured and ill persons. A parent had a question regarding what would happen in the case of a medical emergency with a student participating on a Zoom. It was decided that in conjunction with the Strauss estimate that the protocol would be to contact the parents, and if deemed necessary, called 911. Staff would then contact the nurse's office to inform them of the emergency, and they would take over the parent communication from there. The staff would not be dispatched to the house. Students' addresses are on file, but there's no guarantee that the student would actually be at the home listed in the file. And we also, which I think is for first reading, right? Do we have, oh no, wait, do we have any readings? Yeah.
Yes.
The school calendar, policy 8210, the school calendar year is revised. The policy language will be amended to include the following. In the event Rosh Hashanah occurs during the first week of school, the first day of school will not coincide with the first full day of Rosh Hashanah. The 2021-22 school year will be amended to reflect the change, and school will start on Wednesday, September 8th, and the extra snow day in May will be removed. So we have that first reading of that draft today. And that's everything, if anyone has any questions.
Anyone have any questions for Ms. Korn?
Not a question, but just to add on to what she just said about the calendar, because I had a couple of people asking about it. When we make a change to the school calendar, it has to have a first and second reading. So next board meeting, I'll go for second reading, but it's not going to show up with the revised calendar on the website yet, because it has to go for second reading first. So just because it doesn't show up there doesn't mean it's not going to get changed or revised.
Yeah, it'll take a little bit to show up on the line.
Thanks, Mrs. McCune. So can we have a motion? Ms. Beckman and Mr. Salmon. And then could we please have a roll call, Mr. McLaughlin?
Ms. Beckman?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Salmon?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Korn?
Yes.
Mrs. McCune?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Madam President?
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Our next item is the Curriculum Committee report. Mrs. Richmond?
Hi. Curriculum met on January 8th. First up, we talked about two new course proposals. One is Introduction to Computer Programming. Mr. Colmer explained that this course is specifically designed for students with no prior coding experience, with the hopes to inspire those interested in pursuing further advancement in the field of computer science. This course will be project-based and collaborative in nature, and it would be open to all students in grades 9 through 12. The goal is for it to be a full year course that will roll out in 2022-2023 school year. This other course that we talked about was Advanced Theater and Production. This course is scheduled to roll out in the fall of 2021 for 2021 and 2022, if there's enough students who sign up for it. Currently there are very limited opportunities for students to advance their training through the role of stage manager. In this semester-long course, students will learn about the roles of the theater production staff, receiving hands-on training in a variety of roles, including supervisory roles in lighting, sound, set design, stage management, costume director, makeup director, props supervisor, music director, choreographer, and orchestra director. The course culminates with a student-created, directed, produced one-act play or musical. Then we talked about program of study changes that will appear now in the new, for the next year. Dance 3 is changing from a 5-credit course to a 2.5 credit course. So that means it's going from a full year course to an elective, semester elective. And this is for students who either interested in dance performance or dance education as a career, or who exhibit high level of ability in dance. It's available for performing arts credit and is recommended for students in their junior or senior year. Students may take dance 3 multiple semesters, but it will only satisfy the graduation requirement one time. A cappella choir is no longer being offered as a 2-credit course. Instead, students enrolled in Ridge Chorale or Concert Choir who have successfully auditioned to be a member of a cappella choir will receive honors credit for those courses. Students accepted in a cappella choir are required to attend regularly scheduled rehearsals and additional performances outside the normal school day schedule. We also got an update on Accelerated Algebra 1 grade requirements. Students enrolled in Accelerated Algebra 1 in 7th grade and 8th grade are electing to take an extremely rigorous and accelerated pathway for mathematics. These students will study Algebra 1 standards as well as a portion of 8th grade standards as prescribed by the New Jersey Student Learning Standards. Grade 7 students who earn a B- or better may continue in Geometry 8, and grade 8 students who receive a B- or better may continue in honors geometry in 9th grade. Any 7th grader who earns a C+ or below must enroll in Algebra 1 in 8th grade. We talked about, the next thing we talked about is option 2 and the revisions for the 2021-22 school year. For 2021, there will be a more rigorous approval process for off-site program applications to be completed by the option 2 committee. Designated staff members will monitor and grade weekly journal entries, and they will also help with the approval process and grading each marking period. Because a need has been shown for students, especially freshmen, to have more meaningful and proper instruction for fitness, wellness, and workout activities, and our district has a robust physical education program that we value, option 2 will be limited to grades 10 through 12. The feeling is that freshmen need more meaningful instruction in these areas. Additionally, option 2 would be decreased to only 1 marking period per ridge sport, whenever that means when a sport crosses over into 2 marking periods. The student will have to choose which marking period will be the option 2 study hall, and which will be PE or health, depending upon what marking period we're in and which grade we're talking about. And only students who earn a B or better the year before may participate in option 2 physical education. If a student needs a semester-long study hall, that student should be making sure to schedule a study hall into his or her course selections for the next year. It should be noted that there was no discussion to eliminate option 2, just plans to make the program, especially for off-site activities, a more meaningful experience for students. There was a little update on the summer financial literacy course. Pending current health conditions and state guidelines, assessments may be given in an online format. However, students should plan to appear in person for assessments when signing up for the course. One is scheduled for July and one is scheduled for August. As a reminder, this course is rigorous and students who plan to enroll in this course should allow time for their schedules for daily class assignments. Please note, if you're unable to attend a testing date, which will be posted on the application, you will not be able to enroll in this course. There are no other options for assessments. We had a little bit of a discussion about VOTEC students and graduation requirements. As a result of the pandemic, the schedules between Ridge and VOTEC did not align this year for the shared time students, and schedule plans needed to be worked out individually. With the plans to move to a rotating drop schedule next year, there may be need to work with these students again individually, especially with regard to meeting graduation requirements via online courses. Parents often need to pay for at least one of these online courses if they're not available to take at VOTEC during their time at VOTEC or at Ridge during the time that they're in attendance at Ridge. So the district is planning to keep a close eye on how the new schedule impacts these students' abilities to meet graduation requirements. And there are currently 21 shared time students in that program. We got a quick update on the mock schedule for the rotating drop plan. The supervisors are looking at the details of the mock schedule to make sure that all courses have a teacher in a room to ensure that we have the capacity for a modified rotating drop schedule. And a leadership team meets weekly, and they are developing a communication plan that will roll out in pieces of what information people need to know when, and they're working on that now. We talked about what's next for the 2021 plan. We specifically talked about grades K through 5 afternoon Zoom check-ins. For now, the administration is trying to find time for teachers to plan with their grade level teachers to develop online lesson material and provide feedback to students, especially with the new digital platforms that they're working with this year. And the schedule that was created at the beginning of the year, teachers' prep time was divided into 30 minutes at the beginning of the day and 30 minutes in the afternoon. And it's been difficult for teachers to coordinate the time they need together to work together. So for the teachers who are providing the small group lessons in reading, writing, and mathematics each week, and some of those are in person, some of those are on Zoom, depending on the student. If they're doing 2 Zoom check-ins per week also, they can use the other 2 afternoons for planning, feedback, and collaboration with their peers. Where a teacher needs to use time for more small group instruction, mini lessons, or afternoon check-ins, they can do that and should be doing that. Next, we talked about grades 6 through 12 professional development days. There's a need there for the teachers to work with their PLCs, which are professional learning communities, once a month, as well as to provide additional training and support on the variety of new platforms the district will be using this year. On Wednesday, January 6th, the teachers at WAMS and Ridge participated in professional development ed camp, and that was successful and very well received. On February 3rd, in lieu of department meeting, teachers will be working within their PLCs and course levels on teacher recommendations for classes, and the curriculum supervisors will be available to students and parents during the afternoon to answer scheduling questions. And oh, and you already answered this, but we did also talk about the question of why PD is on Wednesdays and teachers are contractually obligated to attend department and faculty meetings on Wednesdays. So that is what they use, or how they're using those at that time. Next, we talked about disengaged students. This has been a topic at the Wellness Committee, and various concerns have been discussed, such as grades being posted or not being posted in a timely manner, what is happening during tutorial times, pacing of curriculum, and how that translates to students and how they are doing in class. Are students disengaged or holding their own with distance learning? Part of the February 3rd Teacher and Service Day might be spent talking about this topic. Teachers, counselors, and assistants, principals are continuing to work with students who are struggling in a virtual learning environment by working with the students and teachers and parents to create action plans for improvement. In addition, the district is working to ensure that they have identified all the students who are struggling and include them in the process so that they can give them the support they need. Unfortunately, some of the feedback from teachers, counselors, and assistant principals is that they aren't getting a response or a compliance from the students they are reaching out to. And if a parent feels that a student is disengaged or is struggling, please, 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 please reach out to the teacher to develop a plan for your student. And then we talked about the proposed amendments to the return to instruction plan, which basically is our presentation from tonight. The next meeting is February 5th. And does anyone have any questions?
Any questions for Karen? Okay. And we don't have anything to approve on that one. So that brings us to the Wellness Committee report. Mrs. White?
Wellness is actually meeting, I believe, the 28th this week.
Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to our liaison reports. Does anyone have anything? Mrs. Korn?
Yep, the Municipal Alliance met, and you just bear with me for a second because I have to look at my email real quick. And we talked about a lot of things, and I just wanted to give you a little, take a minute for that too. And this one, they gave, I have a bunch of different programs that they're offering that I want to talk about, but also at the, Caitlin Cartaccio, she's the community program coordinator. They're doing this great program with the library in Basking Ridge, the Burns Township Library, called like Grab and Go Teen Outreach. And they were making these little to-go bags with, I don't know, like they did one for the holidays, and they did it in December. They had 50 kits with snacks, geodes, and other things to help kids with stress, to de-stress, and they could just go pick them up at the library for like teens, and it could be for anyone. You don't have to be any kids in town. They didn't have to be part of their program, their teen programs, and they and she worked with Rachel, who is the she's the teen coordinator at the library, and they said it went really well, and they want to do, they were going to plan to do stuff like for January, like Sharpie mugs with hot chocolate bombs, and different activities are planned on maybe Zoom or live, depending on the pandemic. So they're really trying to reach out to the kids, the teens, to de-stress. They're trying to think of all these different ways to do that. And they're really excited about that partnership. That's just one of the things going on. And then there's a couple of programs that they were highlighting. It's hard to, there's like a lot of them. There's a teen town hall. It's with Hunterdon County Medical Center residents, and it's on January 26th from at 7. It's a virtual via Zoom, like everything. And you have to register online. I don't think I have. You could probably Google it. It's in a town hall. You have to ask mental health questions to their panel of prevention staff and medical residents from the Hunterdon Medical Center. And I think they're having these posted if you go to like Municipal Alliance, or I think they send them out to, I don't even know if we've had this posted or not on the wellness sites. It's because I think they sent them to all the stakeholders and things. There's also Somerset County Hope and Healing. It's confidential, anonymous, and free. Like if it's individual emotional support, community education on disaster reactions and recovery, coping skills for managing stress, psychoeducation material, support groups. There's a phone number, 908-231-6414. If you're, if you're affected by COVID-19 pandemic, you can call the number. There's also this, I think it's a Facebook Live, a free Facebook Live presentation given by Blueprint Mental Health, which is located in Somerville. And they're saying many families have been deeply impacted over the last 9 months. Being quarantined has put an unprecedented amount of stress on families. Kids have been isolated, pummeled by a media that incites fear, and forced to adapt to distance learning. Parents are doing their best to put on a brave face and support their children while also dealing with their own stuff. While all this is going on, we've been dealing with an election that has sparked extremely strong emotions and has divided us in ways we never thought possible. Basically, things have been really hard. We at Blueprint understand this, and we want to support you and your family during this unprecedented time. So on February 4th at 7 p.m., they're hosting a free Facebook Live presentation, Parenting in the New Not So Normal. They're going to discuss the impact of COVID on our mental health, setting limits and boundaries, screen time, visiting friends, homework, picking your battles, putting your oxygen mask on first, maintaining relationships, and a Q&A to follow. So you can go to facebook.com/Blueprint Health. for that, and that's on February 4th at 7 p.m. Because someone in the meeting had asked about that. There's also a movie. There's a screening that's called The Upstanders. It's a documentary about resilience and the power of connection to end bullying. And that's on January 27th. And that's put together by a bunch of the municipal alliances in different towns around here. They got together to do this, and it's virtual, and you can register at http://bit.ly/the upstanders. And these are all on the website, and they're being sent around. I'm not sure if we have them on ours at BOE, but the Municipal Alliance. I think, let me see, I think that's it. Hold on. There's also Love Doesn't Have to Hurt on February 11th. It's in recognition of National Teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month. It's a virtual discussion, exploring warning signs of unhealthy relationships, which can include not only physical violence, but also more subtle behaviors as emotional and verbal abuse, manipulation and control, digital abuse and stalking. So on February 11th, that's from 6 to 7:30. You have to register for that, and it's being run by Empower Somerset and the Empower Youth Advisory Board. And it's this is also, you have to click on it to register, but you could probably Google it to find it. And it's for middle and high school students and their parents. So you have to have an adult in order to join the Zoom. And it's called Love Doesn't Have to Hurt. And I think that might be it. I think that's it. You know, it's a lot of information, so I don't have all the links and everything, but if you go to the Municipal Alliance or Google some of the things, I think you can find them if you need them.
Thank you, Mrs. Korn. I see Mrs. Richmond's hand.
I just wanted to say, wow, that's a lot of programs that they're putting out there. I hope people sign up because a lot of great things happening there. And for Somerset County Ed Services Commission is having a meeting on February 3rd. That's the next meeting. And I don't have an agenda yet for it, but I'll let you know if there's anything critical on there.
Thank you, Mrs. Richmond. Any questions? Okay. So with that, we are up to public comment on non-agenda items. Ms. Fox, do we have anyone in the waiting room?
No, there's no one in the waiting room right now.
Okay, Mr. Syed, do we have anything written?
We just have one public comment on non-agenda
Okay.
item. It's Sherry Nelson, 195 Smoke Rise Road. Is there a calendar available that shows the schedule of abbreviated days for professional development? I know that these will not be district-wide abbreviated days, but we need a schedule for planning purposes. I also wanted to add that our family will miss Mr. Isaacs as he is retiring at the end of the week. We have had a lot of great teachers over the years, but he is the best of the best. My son was in game club with Mr. Isaacs for all 3 years of middle school and enjoyed his elective classes in 7th and 8th grade. He always goes above and beyond for his students. Mr. Isaacs is definitely my son's favorite teacher. My son is registered for game design at Ridge next semester and is devastated that it won't be with Mr. Isaacs. But Mr. Isaacs has arranged a special Zoom session with my son so he can say goodbye. We just wanted to say that we wanted to thank Mr. Isaacs for having such a positive impact on our son. He will be greatly missed, and we wish him well and the best in the future. And that is all.
Okay. I just want to say that what a nice way to finish public comment for the evening. And I know that the sentiment shared by Mrs. Nelson is shared by many families who have had Mr. Isaacs over the years. So thank you, Mrs. Nelson, for saying that for a lot of us. Okay, so I guess we'll close public comment since there is none and move on to board forum. Board members? Yes, Mrs. White.
I have two things. One, I just wanted to say thank you. I don't know how many of you were aware of the delivery that if you have a senior that your child received this week, which were chocolate bombs, which this was my first time ever seeing. but it made my son really happy. And, you know, when we're talking about our kids and their mental well-being, it's just a little thing like this that can make such a difference. And for the kids knowing, you know, on the 21st of, you know, each month that there's something to look forward to is really wonderful. And I want to thank the parents who organized that. And, you know, maybe there's a way to do things like this for, you know, other grades, and not to take away from the specialists for the seniors, but knowing that, you know, something so simple does cheer a kid up. You know, it is something that, you know, maybe we could look into. And the other thing is, you know, and I don't want to get on my soapbox, but I always feel at the end of these meetings that I need to say thank you to the teachers and the staff. Many of them watch these meetings on live streams and feel so disheartened and defeated by all the criticism when they are really working so hard to deliver the best possible education despite these difficult times. And feedback and concerns are so important for us to listen to so that we can continue to make improvements. But positive feedback and appreciation is also important to give to those who spend their days and their nights trying to do right by our kids. And I just feel like I couldn't let, you know, the evening go by without saying that, just as I couldn't let the evening go by without acknowledging how upsetting it was to hear earlier. You know, it may have been a poor choice of words, but I know we will be hearing that poor choice of words repeated back to us. And I just want to reiterate, you know, nobody's child from any teacher or any staff member or board of ed member, we don't think of anybody that way. And I want to say thank you to everybody who does all that they can to get us through this horrific year. And I long for the day when there are other things that we can talk about at these meetings besides the return to instruction.
Thanks, Mrs. White. I think we all share your feelings on that one. Mrs. Beckman, I saw your hand if you'd like to take a turn.
Sorry, I lost my button there for a second. Thank you, Jen. That was very nice. I feel bad following you. Anyway, I have just a couple things. The first one is a shout out to Mr. Gebhardt, a Latin teacher at Ridge. I walked in on a class he was teaching to my son. I was just dropping something off in his room, and he was so animated, and he was reading a passage, and I was only there for a few minutes, but he was reading a passage, and then he started lecturing, and then he related it to Monty Python, and he was just so engaged with the students. He was so energetic, and I just felt like I was learning in those minutes that I was in there. It was amazing. It was just really good. He's a great teacher.
Having had 4 students all take Latin all of their world language years, I could not agree more. Anyone else with thoughts on public comment? I mean, board forum. No one else?
Ms. Gray, I'm sorry, Ms. Gray. I just wanted to address the one question Ms. Nelson asked about a calendar for abbreviated days. We can certainly work on putting something together on that topic, and we can share that out. I don't anticipate a lot more of them, but we may have some in the remaining portion of the year, so we can try to organize some dates. And they may vary by grade level. As I mentioned, we've kind of taken a different spin on some of the PD time this year. The only other thing I wanted to mention was, I know I had said earlier that there was a kind of late addition to the agenda. I think it was item 10 from the finance report. I don't know, I had to step away a couple times tonight. I apologize about that. So I'm not sure if anybody mentioned the reason for that agenda item, but I thought it was pretty cool. Actually, one of our senior students at Ridge, Angelina Zhu, took it upon herself to learn coding. So Tom Miziak reached out to me and explained to me what that $2,000 win was, if you will. So Angelina developed a machine learning program designed to take fake news, specifically deep fakes, which are detailed images that have been edited using artificial intelligence. Deep fakes are commonly used to spread disinformation and influence social media users. Angelina submitted her work to the Regeneron Science Talent Search and was one of 300 students to be recognized nationwide. And as part of that recognition, Angelina earned $2,000 for her school, and things like that are typically donated to the school for the purposes of, supporting, a club like Science Club or Technology Club or something to that effect. So I just wanted to explain that a little bit and congratulate Angelina for this really cool thing that she did, where she conducted her research on her own and developed a pretty cool, complex program and won some national accolades. So thanks to Mr. Miziak for sharing with me what it was that Angelina did. And I just wanted you guys to understand what that $2,000 was all about.
Thanks, Mr. Markarian. I'm sorry about the confusion. Some of you were pointing and we're all in different places on the Zoom screen. So I wasn't sure where to put my attention. Sorry about that. I saw Mrs. Corn's hand.
Kat, just really quick, I just wanted to what Jen said. The teachers have been amazing. Like I do have a struggling kid, and they've reached out and they email me and say, hey, heads up this. And so they are on top of it. And I think sometimes the problem is when you have a health department and nurses and doctors kind of in charge of the school, they look at things a different way than our hired educators and professionals and educational professionals look. Their focus is on one thing and one thing only, and like making sure everyone's protected from COVID. And that's where you get the miscommunication with the language and saying things like that. And I like it better when we have our educational professionals in charge of our schools. So I can't wait to get back to that, because that's when our schools will get back to normal, not when we have outside influences actually not running, but influencing the school way too much, But the teachers have been great and they've been working really hard. I have to agree. I mean, it's not easy for anybody. So, and that's what, and I think, kudos to them. And I hope that we can get everyone back safe and it'll be great. And I just can't wait till it's back to where we have our educational professionals really in charge of what's going on with the schools.
Thanks, Mrs. Corn. Anyone else? I just want to say one thing about, well, I'm going to start by talking about the possibility or the eventual probability of returning to an in-person Board of Education meeting, something that's come up with the board over the past several weeks. And we've discussed the complexity of doing so, and the fact that with each aspect of it, there will be difficulty. And we had a little conversation in our executive session about this tonight. And as a way of tying it back to what Mrs. White said and Mrs. Corn just said about our staff and our teachers, Mr. Markarian said to the board, and when we try to do that, and it will be a giant pain, you'll know a little bit, I'll just have a little glimpse into what our teachers are dealing with every day. And we want you to know we appreciate that. We can't fully appreciate it because we're not doing what you're doing, but we do appreciate that there's nothing like what you're trying to do right now, and just teaching in two completely different but simultaneous environments. And we do know how taxing that is. So you are on our minds, and we are grateful for all the work that you're doing. And then I can't leave it alone. There were several comments tonight that suggested that save one, this group of dedicated volunteers doesn't care about the children of Bernards Township. And speaking exclusively for myself, not having a current student in the district, I'd either have to be out of my cotton picking mind or passionate about what's good for the children of Bernards Township. And I'm going to choose the latter. That's why I choose to be on the Board of Education after my youngest child graduated. But I know this group of 7 others besides myself, and I know that the person we appoint in February to take the vacancy will also be doing so because they're concerned about the students of Bernards Township, just like our staff is and parents are. And so please don't make any mistakes in saying something like that to this group who is working hard as a volunteer to do everything we can to be a part of making things better for the students of Bernards Township. Anybody else? Okay, I guess that's it then. If someone wants to make a motion. Mr. Salmon and Mrs. Beckman. Anyone not in favor? All right, that's it, Mr. McLaughlin. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night.